Hey there! Let me show you how I built this 1/72nd scale Sea Hurricane Mk.I. We start with the main landing gear bay. It's a pretty straightforward step, but there's a catch. The landing gear needs to be glued in place before closing up the wings. Now I can move on to the cockpit. One thing to watch out for: the locating pins on the internal framework are a bit oversized, so it's a good idea to slightly enlarge the mounting holes. Time for paint. First, a coat of silver. Then interior gray-green. I'm painting the details with a brush using acrylic paints. They're perfect for this kind of work. It's worth spending a bit more time on the instrument panel. I painted it dark gray and used pure black for the dials. Now I can apply the decals. I'm using Mr. Mark Setter Neo Decal Solution to help them settle nicely. Getting the decals perfectly positioned can be tricky. I use a damp cotton swab and microsol solution to help smooth them out. After the decals dried, I sealed everything with clear coats. First a gloss finish, then a matte one. Finally, I applied a tiny drop of clear gloss on each instrument to imitate the glass. Now it's time for the wash. I mixed it myself using oil paints and turpentine. I apply it carefully only where dirt would naturally gather, then gently wipe off the excess with a cotton swab. The interior goes together like a puzzle. Everything fits perfectly, and the details are really good for this scale. It's a shame so little of it will be visible once the fuselage is closed. As usual, I use cyanoacrylate glue to assemble the fuselage. Next, I use a flat file to remove the excess glue that has squeezed out of the seam. For putty, I use Mr. Surfacer Primer applied with a brush. I also use the same method to fill in sink marks that I found. After it hardens, you can remove the excess Mr. Surfacer with a cotton swab soaked in a solvent, like Mr. Leveling Thinner. This is especially useful when there are delicate details nearby that you don't want to damage. This kit is based on the Hurricane Mk.I model. The fuselage section with the hook is a 3D printed part that needs to be glued in place after removing the corresponding plastic from the fuselage halves. The position lights are designed as clear parts. To install them, you need to remove a section of the wing. I used a check razor blade to do this. It's a straightforward process. I finish by smoothing the edges with a flat file. As you can see, the wings align beautifully with the fuselage. The fit is nearly perfect. With the wing glued to the fuselage, it's time to fill the gaps between the 3D printed parts and the plastic. I'm using Mr. Surfacer again, applied carefully with a brush. Mr. Surfacer was also applied wherever the joint between parts stood out too much. After it dries, I clean up the excess with a cotton pad soaked in Mr. Hobby leveling thinner. I attach the hook using cyanoacrylate glue. Once the entire airframe is assembled, I can move on to restoring the panel lines. I usually do this using a razor saw. Use extra thin glue to smooth out the newly scribed panel line and remove any plastic burrs. In hard-to-reach areas, I restore the panel lines using a needle. The radiator is temporarily attached with blue tack. I'll glue it permanently after painting the model. Masks for the canopy are included in the kit. After masking all the clear parts, I gently sand them to help the paint stick better. I attach the canopy using extra thin glue. You need to be careful here to avoid damaging the clear parts with the adhesive. I start painting the canopy with the interior color, which in this case is RAF Interior Gray-Green. After priming the model, I noticed that in a few areas I needed to restore some details, including Zeus fasteners. For that, I used a cut-down hypodermic needle. I also re-drilled the air intake on the left side of the nose. Then, I masked off the fabric-covered surfaces and sprayed silver paint from Mr. Hobby onto the rest. Now I'm ready to start painting the camouflage. As always, I begin with the underside, applying pre-shading along all panel lines using a blend of the base color and black. Then I began covering the panels with their proper color. Using heavily thinned paint and low air pressure, I apply the color in streaks to achieve a non-uniform, textured finish. I also add highlights using a lighter shade. I also add some subtle weathering using a darker shade. That's the position light. I'm going to remove the gray plastic part and rebuild it later. I paint the upper surfaces similarly to the underside, starting with pre-shading. Next, I fill the remaining surfaces with a mottled pattern. You can download camouflage mask templates from the Arma Hobby news page. I use them to trace the camouflage lines on the model with an acrylic pencil. Remember, don't use a regular pencil as it will show through the paint. I'm now ready to fill the camouflage patches with their correct colors. I apply multiple shades of the same color, mixing lighter and darker tones. Now it's time for the green, also applied in several layers using different shades, alternating between darker and lighter ones, always in a mottled pattern. After removing the masks, I decided to tone down the pre-shading a bit as it stood out too much. This panel stands out in reference photos, so I decided to paint it in a slightly different shade. Photos suggest that some panels on this aircraft were painted in the dark green and ocean gray camouflage colors, so I repainted them accordingly. It's time to paint the quick identification markings. The leading edges and the vertical stabilizer were painted yellow. To deal with the poor coverage of yellow paint, I alternate between yellow and white layers. This way, the yellow builds up nicely and covers well. You might remember I used silver paint over the primer. Now it comes in handy. I use sandpaper and sanding sponges to create realistic paint chipping. When it comes to more delicate chipping, I use a worn-out airbrush needle for better control. And I weather the leading edges of the wings using a metal brush. I also added scratches that could have been made by the pilot while climbing into the aircraft. I then applied some paint touch-ups around the machine gun openings. Finally, I painted the patches with photoreactive paint, which was sensitive to chemical warfare gases. I added the anti-slip walkway markings as well. Applying the decals was smooth and easy. As always, I used Mr. Mark Setter Neo together with Micro Sew. When I checked the reference footage of this aircraft, I realized the yellow marking on the vertical stabilizer was oversized. I then protected the decals by applying a layer of clear varnish. I then added a pin wash, mixing oil paints with turpentine for better definition of the details. Naval aircraft operated in very harsh conditions, with decks frequently washed over by seawater. To replicate this effect, I applied white oil paint to simulate salt stains. To soften the effect, I gently blended the paint with a cotton swab moistened with oil thinner. I took care of the smaller parts as well, painting the wheels, radiator, and landing gear doors. To give a metallic effect, I dry brushed some parts with gunmetal paint. At this stage, I can attach the radiator cover. I also added some details I noticed on reference photos of the original aircraft. Oil streaks were made with oil paint to simulate realistic wear. I applied the same technique to add streaks along the underside of the fuselage. The exhaust stains was applied with a heavily thinned black-brown paint for a realistic effect. I used clear epoxy resin to make the covers for the position lights. The last remaining tasks are gluing on the propeller and adding the antenna wire. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.